Welcome back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest, most entertaining stories, where I go over them, analyze them, and most certainly make fun of them. Today, I'm going to go over a story titled, My Cousin Falsely Said Some Things About Me, and now my family has contacted me after almost 10 years. And guys, this story is all about a guy. He is, I believe, 31 or 32 years old. And 10 years ago, when he was 21, out of the blue, he gets a phone call from his mom, screaming and yelling at him because his younger cousin said that he had, when he was younger, did some things. I have to watch what I say. You're on YouTube, but you guys can connect the dots. I'm talking about things to her when he was younger, which obviously was not true. And they completely disowned him. They wouldn't even listen to him, his side of the story, any of that stuff. And this guy really went on the deep end for a little bit, but somehow managed to persevere, survive, build a life, even though he'd been completely abandoned by his family, everybody who he loved and cared about, who he thought loved and cared about him. And now 10 years later, guess who's back? Guess who's back wanting him back into life? Because guess what? Turns out what she said was not true. That'd be a good one here to go over here, guys, just on the crazy story aspect and how sad these things happen, and how this whole believe all certain gender is bullshit, and sad how literally the way the narrative is that literally a guy is guilty until proven guilty, because once there's an accusation like that, done. And it's interesting sometimes when you hear these stories in the news where these young guys are accused of certain things, and then later on obviously it's proven not true, and the girl gets in trouble. Now, certainly there are guys that do awful things, and those guys deserve what's coming, but a lot of good men out there have accusations thrown at them, and it's terrible. But anyhow, I thought this would be a good one to go over here, and this guy, I really respect how this guy stays strong and perseveres and gets to have the last laugh. And he's, of course, wondering, what the hell do I do with my family now? It says here, hello. I never had an account on Reddit before, but someone on another forum linked me to the subreddit. I've been reading some stories. If this is the wrong subreddit, please let me know. Also, English is not my first language, so please bear with me. It's pretty much like the title says, I just feel so lost on what to do. This is tearing up wounds, and an old rage is building back up. So it took them like 10 years to finally move on, and of course that's when they reach out. Let me give some backstory here. I grew up in what was probably the most normal household. My parents worked a lot, but still managed to care for me and my 3 older sisters. We were never super close as a family, but never had any issues either. Same goes for my extended family as well. They lived a few hours away, but we saw each other during summer holidays or Christmas and always got along great. But when we got older, we naturally grew apart as everyone had their own lives. Okay, not too close, not too far apart. Sounds like a typical family in the modern age. I am 31 years old now. In 2014, when I was 22, I was attending university. I got a phone call from my mother that turned my life upside down. I remember I didn't even answer at first because I was gaming with friends, but she called me again immediately after the first phone call. This was an unwritten rule of the family. If you call twice like that, it's important. Like someone died important. So when she called again, I excused myself and answered the phone, only to hear chaos in the other end. Like people were arguing. But when my mom realized I had answered, it sounded like she went into another room and closed the door. I just asked what was going on, and I heard she was crying. My memory of this conversation is a bit blurry, but she basically asked me if I had something to confess to regarding E. E is the code name for his a-hole cousin. E is my cousin on my mom's side and is 7 years younger than me, 15 years old at the time. At that point, I hadn't even seen E for several years. I just said no and asked, what is this about? She just cried even harder and started accusing me of doing bad things, you get the point, back when we were kids. That E had told everything to my sister, and that my sister told my mother and my aunt. E had told them back when she was 9 years old and I was 16 that she'd been playing in my room when I came in, and I started doing things. My mother screamed at me to say something, but I couldn't even speak. It was all so absurd. I remember thinking this must be some bad joke. It ain't a joke. Right here. And as you're going to see, her word against his. And this gal who's telling this to his mom, who told this to the family, is 15. And there are some people that will immediately say, well, she was 15 and she was a teenager and didn't know any better. Bullshit. I was 15 once. I knew darn well that the other 15-year-old girls at the time certainly knew what they were doing. The last thing I remember saying was that it's not true and that E was lying. But then my mom goes on saying that how E gave such a detailed description of where and how. Detailed description, that's usually how liars operate. Usually the more the details, the more they're lying. Then she kept asking something like, did you do this? Did you do this? And I just screamed back, no, each time. It all ended with my mom putting me on speaker and both my mom and dad saying that they don't want anything to do with me and never to contact them again. Two of my sisters texted me that day pretty much saying the same thing, that I'm disgusting, and then blocked me. Holy freaking shit. Just like that. He's done. He doesn't even get a chance to defend himself, except for him saying, I didn't do that. Just like that, they cut him off. Again, in a sense, guilty until proven guilty, because even then, people that supposedly are clear to blame or whatever, people still, it's left in their mind, oh, they just got some lawyer or it's some BS or some bullshit story like that. This poor young guy, he's only 22, And here's the deal. We all know darn well what this could do to him. Aside from being abandoned, how it could jeopardize his career, how it could jeopardize, how, if said to the authorities, could get him arrested and jail time, prison time. And you know what happens to guys that do things like that? You see what I mean? And this girl doesn't give a shit. It's a big fucking game to her. I know it's weird, but after that call, I went to have a long shower. To this day, I still don't know why I did that. After calming down, I started calling and texting everyone, even E. No one answered, and the ones who had blocked my number by then quickly did so. The only thing I heard back was from my father, who texted me to stop contacting them and they needed to heal. What about me, motherfucker? I need some healing too. That was 9 years ago, and I haven't spoken to anyone in my family since that day. That poor guy. But you know what? He, as you're going to see, survives. This is what men do. They go through absolute hell, and they find a way to survive. And honestly, it'd be like my sole purpose of survival will be just as a giant F you to all those people that said those things about me. To this day, to say this F me up is an understatement. I was living in a haze for weeks after that and hardly ate at all. It didn't help that this was right before I was supposed to defend my bachelor's thesis and was already stressed out. Luckily, my co-writer sensed something was up and saved me by controlling the conversation that I got the easy parts. Without him, I would have failed. Needless to say, no one came to my graduation. Then started the worst period of my life. I spent the first year expecting the police to knock on my door and arrest me for doing those things. I didn't land any jobs. I just started living off my savings and saved money. I drank a lot and did oxy. I also grew resentful and violent. The only reason I didn't hurt anyone, excuse me, the only reason I didn't hurt anyone is because no one was around. My neighbor called the cops one day on me after I'd smashed a glass, but I managed to convince the officers that I had just dropped it. And they went away since there was no others inside my apartment. Instead of sleeping, I spent my nights planning how I could hurt E and make sure no one ever found out. Even thinking how I could actually do the things that she accused me of, but much worse. He says, I know, I'm not proud of that. Well, obviously didn't do that, and given what happened, you can't blame the guy, but, obviously don't want to do that. I landed my first real job in my field in late of 2015, so like 1 year later. Only then did things start to improve my life. I focused all of my time on my job as it gave me something normal to do. Recovery was a slow process, but I drank less, sober now for 4+ years, and smiled more. I lived cheap and earned good money, so I made a point of buying myself a nice gift for my birthdays. A VR headset, a motorcycle, Legos, etc. Legos? Is that what he meant to say? Hey, I like Legos, but I've been playing with Legos for about 35 years. And last year, I moved from my shitty apartment and bought a small house. It was an old dream of mine to have my own garage and garden to care for. This has boosted me even more. You hear that? He was gone through hell. And after a year, got his shit together, got his job. He said he lived dirt cheap so he could save money, live beneath his means, as I tell all guys to do. Put away money, got a motorcycle, his Legos, Small house, good for him. Most guys would have just crumbled, and that'd been it. He's doing it on his own freaking man. I mean, I don't want anybody to go through this, but look at me done. He says, so my life is okay now. I still got problems. I've been on antidepressants for the last few years, and while they help, it's not in a happy way. They simply remove the dark thoughts and replace them with dead ones. My trust in other people is close to non-existent. I've tried dating, but only been on 2 dates with 2 different women. It's really hard to speak like a normal person when it comes down to it. And what would I tell a potential partner when she asks about my family? Anyway, think about that one, you know? And obviously, if he had a girlfriend and she started digging, she'd see they were still alive, so he couldn't say they were all gone or something. He says, they accused me of a heinous crime and we're not talking anymore, but I didn't do it, I swear. My field is very male-dominated, so the only woman I really speak to is my therapist, who I like a lot. If this text was difficult to follow, I apologize. I'm not good with words on the best of days, and I started rambling a bit when it all came back to me. It's already getting long, so I will fast forward to my current issue. He says, a few days ago, I received a text from my mother. It felt unreal, and I was scared to open it at first, so I just stared at the notification for hours before opening it. Yesterday, another text followed. Translated, they basically say. Now, before I read these texts, I just want to say this. They haven't talked to him for 10 years. 10 long years. 1/3 of his life. And she reaches out by a fucking text? Really? Here's what the text says. Text number 1. She says, hi, what his name is. It's been so long since we talked. We miss you and want to know how you're doing. You miss me? You are the fuckers that disowned me. You're the motherfuckers that wouldn't believe me. She also says, here she writes a long text about my sisters, how my nieces and nephews are getting big. I didn't even know I was an uncle. And she also said, know that we love you and always will, Mom and Dad. Yeah, I can feel the love through the text. 10 years, abandoned, disowned, whatever you want to call it. You'd think they'd be showing up at his doorstep with flowers and on their hands and knees and a lot of other things. Like a text? Really? He said the second text. They said hello to him. We understand if you don't want to talk to us after what happened, but please listen. Oh, really? You can really understand how I'm feeling. 10 years. You can get it. Sure. Last month, the subject of you was brought up at a family gathering. During this, E was downplaying everything that had happened to her. It got so awkward that she finally admitted that nothing happened and she probably just dreamt it. We were all appalled by this. There you go. There you go. Whatever this girl's excuse was, there you go. His whole fucking life, which could have been completely ruined. Can you imagine the different path his life would have been on if she didn't do this, or if they at least would hear him out? And now they're reaching out 10 years later by text, hoping that he'll give him a second chance. He says here, when we last spoke, this is still the text from Mom and Dad. When we last spoke, we wanted to protect E and did the only thing we thought we could do. We know that's not excusing how you were treated. That's an understatement. What E did was wrong, and we're angry at her. We have called everyone that knew and told them the truth. Oh, well, that fixes everything. I'm sure she's shaking in her shoes that you're angry at her. We all want to speak with you, and your sisters want to meet their families. Please write back if you can find it in your heart to forgive us, Mom and Dad. Here's what I'd say. I would mount my phone on the wall or something, and I'd set the timer to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I would do this to Mom and Dad. Fuck you. After all that, oh no, we're not going to have a relationship. He says, so yeah, that's my situation right now. I haven't answered, but they no doubt know I've seen it. Truth be told, I'm seething. So many old, crappy memories are now stirring again. I don't want to forgive them, and I wouldn't trust myself to be in the same room with them as of right now. Dude, nobody can blame you. You've built this life for yourself after all the hell you've gone through. You are a trooper. Part of me wants to call my family and unleash everything on them, to guilt them with everything I went through until they hit their rock bottom. Then dedicate my life to make my cousin's life as miserable as possible. The other part wants to ignore them and continue with my okayish life with my motorcycle and my garden to keep me company. I don't have many friends. I don't have any friends. The only people I could speak to are my coworkers, but they're not really close. I've called my therapist clinic, but they told me that she's on vacation and won't be available for weeks, and I don't want anyone else other than her. So that leaves internet strangers. So please, where to go from here? Do I ignore them and continue as is, or do I answer? And if so, what do I even write? I'm pretty sure meeting them in person would be a bad idea for the foreseeable future, but I'm not even sure how I can improve from picking up these old threads. As embarrassing as it may sound, I've dreamt about the day that when they apologize, to be throwing themselves on the ground and kissing my feet. Texting seems so anticlimactic right now. Now with his little update, he says also, holy shit, I went to bed yesterday after answering a couple of comments. I was happy then when somebody just said to wait for my therapist to come back. Something had just flown over my head. Now there's 1,300 comments. I can't possibly answer all of them, but I'll try to read them all when I get home from work. Well, brother, you're about to have a video on your story. I just want to address something I saw a few people mention, that my therapist wouldn't leave for that long without telling me. I didn't know how this works in other places, but this is a state-run clinic, no hourly rate or anything like that. I got assigned to her when first going there, which means that she will continue to get me on meetings that follows. But that's not 100%. If she's on leave for sick, I might get someone else. 4 to 6 weeks of vacation is not uncommon. So, what should he do? Well, the first thing is that I think he should definitely not do any knee-jerk reaction and calm down and think about it. Time to go for a long walk and think about things. But personally, I think this guy, he has done a fantastic job surviving. But now he gets to have the last laugh in the sense that now they're back begging to have him back in the life, and that little asshole cousin of his came clean. If there was any shred that he'd give him a second chance, which, by the way, I would not do, I would say this: okay, Mom and Dad, the first thing you can do is wire me some money. I've run the numbers, how much money I've spent in therapy and on antidepressants and all these other costs associated with me surviving after you all abandoned me. And I'm going to give you that number, and then I've added interest to that number, and you're going to wire me that money to my bank account in 24 hours. Then after that, you are going to disown E. The same way that you all disowned me, had nothing to do with me, you're going to disown her and have nothing to do with her ever again. She's banished from the family for life. I don't care what the circumstances are. Then maybe, just maybe, upon evidence of all those things, I will think about talking to you. But to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't blame if he didn't. At the very least, that's what should be done. There should be some payback. He should get something from that. But it's terrible, abandoned by his whole freaking family. But personally to me, at the way they abandoned him like that, no, not a chance in hell. But I'm also a 45-year-old, experienced, heartless son of a bitch sometimes. And that's just me. But he needs to really, as great he's been in therapy and turning things around slowly, but now he does need to forgive him, but not for that, for him. So he can move on and begin to start talking to people and socializing and making some friends and all that. You can't blame him if he doesn't want to have any girlfriends, given what happened. And obviously, hard to say why he doesn't have a family, but still. But that is definitely quite the story here. I'm so proud that he survived and didn't. But imagine what would have happened if it got out and reported to the police. He'd be in prison, and we all know that. It could have been so much worse and affected any job he would ever have. But again, it's such a shame. Good men being accused, and right there. And that cousin, I don't care if she was 15. They should disown her. But something tells me they wouldn't do that. But anyhow, guys, I thought this would be an interesting one to go over here and to show you what happened. So definitely pay attention sometimes when you hear articles or stories. Maybe people being said they did something, whatever. Just think there's always two sides to a story. And sadly, certain gender can get away with things, and it just ruins lives. It's so sad. I mean, look at what happened to Johnny Depp in his career. I mean, good freaking Lord, that's psycho. And there's countless other stories. But I wish this guy the best. I hope he takes his time. He should definitely talk to his therapist about all that before doing anything. But if it was me, I'd have nothing to do with him. But I'd still get that money. That'd be a little bonus, a little severance for 10 years of going through all that. Anyway, guys, I'd like to hear your opinion on this particular subject. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below, know what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.